Hey everybody, welcome back to another reasonable price prediction, the series where we try to figure out where your favorite altcoins could be headed. Today we're looking at Cardano, and in this video specifically we're going to be comparing 2019 to what we're currently seeing. Now, if it is a 2019 bull market, bear market type scenario that we're currently going through, it would discredit the idea of a left translated cycle. And if you are someone who thinks we are currently in a left translated cycle, while you might be tempted to click off this video because you don't want to hear the possibility or you're convinced that it can't be anything other than left translated cycle theory, it doesn't hurt to know what other people are thinking. I'm not asking you to change your mind, I'm just explaining my rationale. So anyway, getting into it, let's take a look at 2019. Last halving, or before last halving, excuse me, we can see that just before 2019, December of 2018, Cardano bottomed out at a price of about 3 cents, and then over the space of 6-7 months it rallied up to about 11 cents. So we saw about a 4x move, under a 4x move, 3.5x move over the space of 6-7 months, and notice that we moved from this low to a high and then the second higher high later on, almost like a double top. But it's important to notice that this first peak isn't as high as the second, and then we traded down for 25 weeks after that until we got a low. We then had a recovery rally, but then ultimately trended lower and bottomed out, putting Cardano's all-time low of 2 cents, an additional 13 weeks after this bottoming out here. So again, quickly, low to a high, second high, this happens over about 25 weeks from low to the highest high, trade down for about 25 weeks, and then an additional 13 weeks where we put in our low. And note that we break down below the price that we started this rally at. Cardano actually ends up at a lower point than it did when it started. Now, having said that, let's take a look at what we're currently experiencing with Cardano. A quick kind of bird's eye view, a mental map of 2019 onto 2024, what's currently happening. You could see that it is possible to see something similar play out. If we zoom in, we can see that Cardano's had this low, like we saw with 2019, rallied up to a first lower high, a bit of a retracement, and then back up to a higher high, the highest point for Cardano, roughly 25 weeks afterwards. I'm pretty sure it was a bit longer. If we take a look, 26 weeks afterwards. So here, while it took us 29 weeks, here it took us 26, so only a 3-week discrepancy. That's not too terrible. And while enough time hasn't passed yet to see if we're going to fall into this kind of 25-week downward bear market type move, we do look like we're on track to do so. And you could argue that we have been doing that. I would say we've been doing that. We've been trending down for at least, let's check, from the high to this week, we've been trading down for about 15 weeks. So potentially another 10 weeks of trading down. And if we do trade down for another 10 weeks, that would put us at the start of September when we can expect this low to kind of take place. And that would fit in quite nicely with another idea that's very popular around crypto, which is the summer lull, which we often do see in crypto. There is often a summertime lull where prices just slowly trade down over the summer months. And we can see, if we go back to 2019, the month that we peaked was June. And then we traded down until Q4. So for those summer months, July, August, September, Cardano traded down. So not only is Cardano similar in terms of the move, but also the seasonality is another thing that could line up very nicely. Another thing that's very similar is monetary policy. In America, they didn't start cutting rates until July in 2019, and we can see that's when we started crashing. This is when this downturn took place for Cardano in 2019. Now, the slight discrepancy of that is that we haven't yet cut rates in America. We have been cutting rates in other parts of the world. The European Central Bank, along with a few others, have started cutting interest rates. So this also does line up quite a bit. But just know, America hasn't actually started cutting rates yet, whereas here they had. So maybe a small discrepancy. If we're going to assume that this is playing out, if we're in a 2019 scenario, how far could we expect to drop? Well, if we zoom in last time and take a look at from the high to this first low, we can see we drop about 70%. And note that 70% is still above this base where we start off. And another thing to remember is that we came down lower than this price in 2019. A 70% drop from our current high, assuming that this is the high, which I think a lot of people would agree with, to be honest with you, a 70% drop would bring us down to this 24 cent baseline level that we've tested again and again and bounced off of. Now again, I know I'm driving it home, but we came down below this support line in 2019. I don't think it's unreasonable to assume we could come back down this support line. If you take a look at videos from 6-7 months ago that we put up on this channel of Cardano, I basically said I think we're probably seeing this play out. And I haven't really changed my views since then. I always kind of said this is why I drew this. If you go back 6 months, this line was always here. And I'd drawn it out this long because I thought we would ultimately come back down to it. If we take a look at how far we've currently fallen from this high, we can see it's already 55% that we've dropped. We don't need to go that much further to come back down to these lows. Again, that's basically 10 cents away. Cardano has dropped from 81 cents to 39 cents. Another 10 cents is not off the table, I don't think. And again, it's got 10 weeks to do so if it wants to do it in time with 2019. It could take longer, it could take shorter. There's no law that it has to follow, but in my opinion, it's heading down. You'll also notice that if we take a look at the move up that we made from the low to the high, about a 230% move. Take a look at what we did from here, from the low to the high, a 290% move. In my book, that's close enough. And with all the other similarities, monetary policy, seasonality, percentage moves, time frames, I would be more inclined to believe that we are just seeing 2019 play out. Maybe we don't get this recovery, this little boost, and then drop down lower. Maybe we just go straight down lower. And maybe we go straight down lower after this 38-week period, which would bring us to end of the year, and then we start rallying. Again, you can see we started our bull run in Q1 of 2020, and we peaked out in Q3 of 2021. We had ages of bull run, but we had to move down to these lows again before we could really move up. And again, I think the test later on that Cardano would need to prove to itself that it's in a bull run is if it takes out these prior highs. Again, these prior highs, once Cardano moves above 80 cents and is able to stay above there, I would personally say we're in a bull run. But I think it has to do that from the lows. Again, the fear and greed index, we've just seen that collapse. I think it's somewhere around 45 today, whereas a few weeks ago, it was around the 80 level. You know what I mean? There's just all these factors that suggest we're going to see strong downward movement for at least the short term, for at least the next few months. So, enough bearish news. Where could we possibly move to if Cardano does bottom out and then we get a bull run? Assuming that we move from these lows and we do come back down to this 24 cents level, again, history would suggest we'll come lower than this, but we're taking this as a baseline. Assuming that you're lucky enough to buy Cardano at 24 cents, we could see that we could potentially get a rally of 2,500% if Cardano wants to follow this long-term trend line that it has followed all of its life. Now, it's only tested this kind of trend or set this trend twice, so this is very flimsy. And again, last cycle Cardano peaked out at $3. You'd be kind of expecting a 2.5x increase from its peak. I don't think that's too crazy to say for an altcoin that has managed to stay prevalent enough like Cardano has. You know, it's been in the top 20 for God knows how long now. Most likely it's going to stay in the top 50 for this bull run, but you just don't know. But I don't think it's going to disappear, basically. Not in the short term. I think it's going to be around for this bull run. Maybe it's the last bull run Cardano really sees any gains. Either way, I think it will probably move well. Now, you could also argue that, well, we shouldn't expect it to just follow this trend line that we've only tested twice. How far did we move from these lows to these highs? That's an even more extreme case. That was an 11,000% move. I'm not even going to bother plotting that because it would put the price of Cardano around $45. I don't think that's going to happen. And I'm not going to advise anybody to do anything, but that is a very outlandish price, in my opinion, to want to sell at, especially for kind of the bull run that might take place next year. All in all, I just think it's important not to get swept up with all these bullish people talking about bull runs and all-time highs any day now, when a lot of the data would suggest we're actually due a few months of bear markets, which will ultimately lead to bullish things because we need to hit these lows before we can hit these highs. Just maybe don't long Cardano with 100x leverage over the next few months. But hey, who am I to say? I could be totally wrong. Anyway, looking at the Bitcoin chart, again, comparing it to 2019, we can see that we do have a similar move where from these kind of lows to the high before a crash, we made about 100% of a move. It was a bit under this time, and it was at a slightly higher Satoshi evaluation, this peak, compared to what we have had recently. But ultimately the same move and the same trend downwards. What's interesting is that Cardano traded down for 18 weeks against Bitcoin before it kind of bottomed out and stayed at these lows before kind of moving into a mini bull run and then rallying up. What we've had recently is much longer than 18 weeks. You can see we passed 18 weeks before the halving, and even 23 weeks, which is a comparison to this move here, took 23 weeks for us to move from this high to this low before the bull run. We've overshot that as well. So even if you believe in the left translated cycle theory, where we're basically experiencing this, if you believe in the normal bull run or the right translated cycle theory, in terms of time frame on the Bitcoin pair, we're now in completely uncharted territory. We haven't seen this before with Cardano in terms of this time frame. So ultimately anything could play out. Now I do think we will just basically trend down to these levels. You can argue this is a show of resilience from Cardano in two ways. You can say that, oh, it's taking much longer than usual to get down to these levels. That shows that it's stronger than it was, and I can't really argue against that. You could say it's much more resilient because we haven't gone down to these lows yet. Again, both plausible, but ultimately we'll only be able to tell with time. Previously what we saw with Cardano was here in 2019 we saw a drop of 77% against the Bitcoin pair. If we're expecting that again, that would bring Cardano down to 350 Satoshis. I don't think we're going to go there. If we do, I think we'll wick down to 350 Satoshis, but of course nothing is impossible. There is every chance in the world that we do go down to 350 Satoshis, especially if we're expecting another 3-4 months of poor price action against Cardano. Again, if you want to look at the end of September, 14 weeks, Cardano has made much worse moves. I mean, 5 weeks here, Cardano dropped 50%. And if you check how far we have to fall from current prices down to this low, it's 30%. It's very doable, and we have a long enough time period for that to be achieved. Again, when it got down to these lows, it just stayed at them for ages as well. So maybe we take longer to get down to these lows and we spend less time there, but ultimately the same amount of time passes from this high to the start of the recovery. Ultimately, both suggest that we're going to at least trade sideways, but most likely trade downwards on the Bitcoin pair against Cardano. If we do come down to these lows, however, the price you could expect to see Cardano against Bitcoin is around 3,000 Satoshis. Now that's at the kind of overbought price. Every previous bull run, Cardano has gone above this, but note that it has lost a small bit from the first to the second. That could suggest that we'll lose a little bit more into the third. If we check how far the second cycle dropped compared to the first, peak to peak, we can see it was a minus 30% of a move. If we take minus 30 from the last peak, drop down 30%, we can see that would put us at around 4,300 Satoshis. So again, this overbought price, about 3,000 Satoshis, I would not be holding Cardano above 4,000 Satoshis. But that's just me. Again, it's up to you to decide what you want to do. Again, just a quick look here. We can see that 51 weeks from this high to this kind of low before we rallied up, we're still well within this time frame for 51 weeks. And we could see that that would bring us to the end of the year, December time, when we rally up. A bit of a difference in seasonality, but you could argue that we actually technically weren't trading up until this low, which again was December of 2020. So there is an argument for seasonality on the Bitcoin pair as well. Either way, whatever you decide to do, I only wish you the best of luck. If you liked the video, guys, please leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike too. That's totally fine. Consider checking out the video up here because the Google AI gods think you will enjoy it. Or you can click on my face over here to check out the channel and find other Cardano videos that you might be interested in. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Take care and peace.